I still remember that morning like it happened yesterday. The sun was just beginning to peek through the blinds, painting golden stripes across my desk as I took another sip of lukewarm coffee. My eyes burned from the long nights I'd spent hunched over my computer, but I didn't care. After a full year of dedication, missed weekends, canceled plans, and countless revisions, my project was finally complete. It wasn't just another presentation or a few pretty slides. It was my blood, sweat, and heart compiled into 58 pages that could change the company's direction forever. I knew it was good. Deep down, I knew it could be a turning point not just for the business but for me too. I had joined the company 3 years earlier as a junior analyst, the kind of position where you're expected to work hard, stay quiet, and not get in anyone's way. But I wanted more than that. I wanted to be seen, to make a difference. So when the chance came to pitch a new strategic plan for the upcoming year, I poured every ounce of my energy into it. My boss, Richard, was a man who loved control. He was sharp, confident, and had a reputation for breaking people down before they even had the courage to stand up. He wasn't the kind of man you could easily impress, and that made me want it even more. 4 months, I worked quietly, building, refining, testing, and revising. My laptop became my best friend and my worst enemy. There were nights I cried in frustration when the numbers didn't align, when reports glitched, or when my vision felt impossible to translate into something corporate. But every time, I got back up, wiped my tears, and started again. I didn't tell anyone about the full scope of my project, not even my closest colleagues. I wanted it to speak for itself when the day came. And that day came sooner than expected. Richard called for a meeting with the executive team to discuss strategy updates. I could feel my heart pounding when he mentioned my name, asking me to present the outline I'd been preparing. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened the file, feeling the weight of 12 months of sleepless nights staring back at me. The room was full of top executives, people who had seen everything, people whose nods or frowns could decide careers. I took a deep breath and began to explain my vision. I showed them how the data connected, how our customer trends revealed an opportunity no one else had noticed, how small adjustments could save millions while unlocking new markets. For the first time, their faces softened. I saw curiosity, even respect. And for a fleeting moment, I thought Richard looked proud. But as I spoke, he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his cold eyes fixed on me. When I finished, the room went quiet. You could feel the anticipation thick in the air. Then he smirked, the kind of smirk that chills your spine. "It's nothing but garbage," he said. The words hit like a slap. I blinked, sure I'd misheard him. The executives looked at him, then at me. "Excuse me," I managed to whisper. He stood, walked over to my laptop, and before I could react, he grabbed the mouse and pressed delete. Just like that, all 58 pages gone. My year of work vanished before my eyes. The room gasped, but he only sneered. "You wasted company time. Next time, focus on your actual tasks instead of playing strategist." He closed the laptop, his voice cutting through the silence. "Meeting's over." I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. It felt like my entire world had crumbled right there in that glass-walled conference room. My hands were shaking, my chest tight, but I forced myself to stay composed. I collected my things, nodded politely, and walked out while everyone watched in awkward silence. When I reached my desk, I sat down slowly. My reflection stared back at me in the dark screen, and I could feel tears burning behind my eyes. But I didn't cry. I just stared. It was strange. After all that humiliation, something inside me clicked. A calm, cold wave replaced the anger and pain. I knew I had to walk away, but not defeated. Then, suddenly, my phone buzzed. I almost didn't pick it up at first. I was too numb, too lost in thought. But something made me glance at the screen, and the name flashing there made my heart stop. I hesitated for a second before answering. "Hello!" The voice on the other end was warm, confident, and unmistakably familiar. "Hi, we've been reviewing your independent proposal. We'd like to offer you a director position, $510,000 a year, complete control over strategy." I froze. My mind raced. They had seen it. The same project Richard had called garbage. They had seen it, valued it, and now they were offering me something beyond anything I'd imagined. I swallowed hard. I accept, I said softly. When I looked up, Richard was standing in the hallway, laughing with a few executives. Then he noticed my phone pressed to my ear, saw my expression change, and slowly the laughter faded. His face went pale. That moment, watching his confidence drain away, was something I'll never forget. But let me take you back a little, because that phone call didn't come out of nowhere. It came from months of quiet work, late nights, and one bold decision I made long before that meeting. You see, when I started my project, I had two versions, one on the company drive and another, slightly refined version, saved in a private cloud folder I owned. I didn't do it out of distrust. It was just my habit to keep backups. That small decision would change everything. Over the next few days after Richard's little show, I kept going to work as usual. He must have thought I was broken, humiliated. But inside, I was calm. I was waiting. Because while he believed he had erased my work forever, my project had already reached someone else, someone at a partner firm who had been quietly following my ideas. I had shared an early version months ago for feedback, and they'd kept it. When they saw what I'd built, they wanted more. I didn't tell anyone at the office. I didn't need to. I just focused on finishing my last tasks, waiting for the right moment. Each day, Richard would pass by my desk, smirking, probably thinking I'd learned my lesson. He had no idea how close his downfall was. Then came that call, the moment that shifted everything. The voice on the line wasn't just anyone, it was the head of strategic development at a leading competitor. They'd been impressed by my research, by the detail, by how I connected market insights no one else had noticed. Apparently, my file had been circulating quietly among senior executives there. They didn't just want to hire me, they wanted me to lead. When I hung up, my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. For the first time in months, I felt truly alive. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. Later that afternoon, I received an official email with the offer letter. I printed it, slid it into a folder, and walked straight into Richard's office. He looked up, annoyed. "What now?" he said. I placed the folder on his desk. "My resignation," I said calmly. He smirked. "Can't handle criticism, huh?" I didn't answer. I just slid the printed offer across the table. His eyes scanned the first few lines, and I watched his color drain. The number, the title, the company name, it all sank in slowly. "You're joking," he said, his voice suddenly tight. "I'm not," I replied. "You deleted my work. They valued it." He didn't say anything after that. The silence between us said enough. I stood, smiled politely, and walked out. As I left the building for the last time, the sun hit my face, and I realized something. I had spent so long seeking validation from people who never wanted to give it. And yet, the moment I stopped trying to prove my worth, the world recognized it. But that wasn't the end. Because just as I stepped out of the office, my phone buzzed again, this time from a number I didn't recognize. I answered, thinking it might be the HR department confirming details. Instead, I heard a voice I didn't expect, someone who would take the story to an entirely different level. And that's when I realized this wasn't over yet. The voice on the other end was low and steady, but there was something in its tone that instantly caught my attention. "You don't know me yet," the caller said, "but I've been following your work for quite some time." I stepped away from the noise of the street, my heart racing faster than it should have. There was a confidence in the way they spoke, the kind that carried authority. "Who is this?" I asked carefully. There was a pause, then a soft laugh. "Let's just say I work closely with the people who offered you that director position. I wanted to speak with you personally before things move forward." My breath hitched. This wasn't just another recruiter or HR representative. The way they said it, calm but commanding, made me realize that whoever they weren't someone who made small talk. They continued, "Your project wasn't just impressive. It exposed a gap in how your company operates, and that caught our attention. But I'm curious, what made you decide to take that risk? You knew your boss wasn't the type to handle being challenged." I didn't answer right away. My eyes wandered across the parking lot, memories flashing of all those late nights when I worked quietly, hoping the results would speak louder than politics. "Because," I finally said, "I was tired of staying invisible. I thought if I built something good enough, it would stand on its own." There was silence on the line, and then the voice said, "That's exactly what we need." And before I could ask more, they added, "We'll talk soon. You're going to be part of something bigger than you realize." The call ended just like that, abrupt, mysterious, and leaving me with more questions than answers. As I stood there, the city around me felt different. The same streets I walked every morning to work now seemed alive with possibilities, and yet a part of me couldn't shake the unease. Who was that person? How long had they been watching my work? And what exactly did they mean by something bigger? That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every word of that conversation, trying to make sense of it. My mind kept drifting back to Richard and the way his face turned pale when he saw the offer letter. Something told me that moment wasn't the last time our paths would cross. People like him didn't just disappear quietly. They always tried to regain control. The next morning, when I arrived at the office to collect the rest of my things, the atmosphere felt strange. A few coworkers congratulated me in whispers, while others avoided eye contact entirely. News travels fast in corporate circles, and I could already sense the shift. I wasn't the employee who got humiliated anymore. I was the one who got away with something extraordinary. But in the middle of those hushed voices and nervous glances, Richard's office door remained closed. I didn't plan on saying goodbye to him, but as I passed by, the door suddenly opened. "Got a minute?" he asked, his tone deceptively casual. I hesitated, then nodded. He motioned for me to come in. The blinds were half closed, the air in the room heavy with the smell of stale coffee. He sat behind his desk, leaning back in that same arrogant posture, but his eyes looked tired. "I've been thinking about what happened," he started. "Maybe I overreacted." I stayed quiet, waiting for the real reason he'd called me in. He rubbed his temples and added, "You and I both know the corporate world is complicated. People get replaced, projects get buried. You're walking into a world where it's not just about ideas, it's about survival. Be careful who you trust." The warning didn't sound like concern, it sounded like experience. For the first time, I saw a crack in his confidence. Maybe he wasn't as untouchable as I'd thought. Maybe he'd realized that his empire wasn't as stable as he believed. I simply nodded, thanked him for his advice, and left without another word. As I stepped outside, a car pulled up in front of the building. It was sleek, dark, and unfamiliar. The window rolled down, and a woman in a gray suit leaned out. "Ms. Evans?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "I'm here to take you to your onboarding meeting," she said with a professional smile. The timing felt too perfect, too calculated. I got into the car, unsure what to expect. The city blurred by outside the window as we drove silently. My mind was spinning. Just 24 hours ago, I was watching a year's worth of work get deleted right in front of me. Now I was being driven to an entirely new beginning, one I didn't fully understand. We arrived at a tall glass building overlooking the city skyline. The company logo gleamed in the sunlight, a name I had only seen in industry reports. Inside, everything felt sharp and efficient, from the way the employees moved to the quiet hum of technology in the air. The woman escorted me to a private meeting room, then left without saying a word. After a few minutes, the door opened, and a man entered. He was tall, with kind eyes but a presence that demanded attention. "You must be the person who made quite an impression," he said with a smile. "I'm Daniel Brooks, Chief Strategy Officer." I shook his hand, trying to hide the nervousness I felt. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity," I said softly. He gestured for me to sit. "We don't give opportunities here," he said. "We recognize people who create them. Your project showed vision, something most companies lack. But before you step into your new role, there's something you should know." My pulse quickened. He continued, "Richard called us yesterday. He wanted to know why we hired you." The words hit me like a jolt. "He what?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Apparently, he didn't realize that we'd already reviewed your work long before he deleted it. But what's interesting," he said, leaning forward, "is that he wasn't calling out of curiosity. He was nervous." I frowned, confused. "Nervous about what?" Daniel's expression grew serious. "Because someone inside his company forwarded us that project in the first place. And whoever did it, they had access to his files too." My stomach dropped. "You mean someone leaked it?" He nodded. "Someone who wanted us to see your potential, and maybe someone who wanted him to fall." I sat there, frozen, my thoughts spinning. Who would have done that? No one in the office knew how much time I'd spent on the project. I'd never shared my full version with anyone, but if someone inside had sent it, that meant they'd been watching me closely, maybe even protecting me. Daniel studied my face and said quietly, "You'll find that in this business, allies and enemies sometimes wear the same suits. Be smart, Miss Evans. You've just stepped into a much larger game than you realize." As I left his office, my phone buzzed again. This time, the message was short, no name attached. "Now you know who really wanted you here. Don't trust anyone completely. We'll be in touch." My heart pounded as I read it again and again. The air in the hallway suddenly felt colder. I looked out the glass window, the city stretching endlessly below me, and realized something that made me shiver. What happened with Richard wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning of something much deeper. And somewhere out there, someone was pulling the strings. The message on my phone lingered in my mind all day. I couldn't focus on anything else. Every word replayed like an echo I couldn't silence. Don't trust anyone completely. It felt like advice, but it also felt like a warning. By the time I got home that evening, my thoughts were tangled in uncertainty. Who had sent it? And why did they seem to know so much about me? I sat on my couch, the city lights glowing faintly through the window, and stared at my phone. For a moment, I thought about replying to the message, but something stopped me. If they wanted to stay hidden, they probably had a reason. Still, the curiosity burned inside me. I needed answers. Over the next few days, I started my new position. The company was fast-paced, sleek, and full of people who looked like they belonged in control. Everyone spoke confidently, moved quickly, and carried an air of quiet competition. On the surface, it was exciting. But underneath, I could sense tension, unspoken hierarchies, hidden rivalries, and politics that ran deeper than anyone would admit. My first week was a blur of meetings, presentations, and introductions. Daniel seemed supportive, but distant. He was the kind of leader who gave direction without ever revealing too much. Then there was Leah, the operations director. She was warm, approachable, and surprisingly open with me. She'd often stop by my office to chat, asking how I was adjusting. It was comforting at first, until one afternoon when she leaned in a little closer and said quietly, "You know, people are curious about you here. They're wondering why Daniel pushed so hard to bring you in." Her tone wasn't unkind, it was cautious. I gave her a small smile and said, "I guess he saw something in my work." Leah nodded slowly. "He must have. But around here, opportunities like yours don't just appear out of nowhere. Someone always pays a price." Then she walked away, leaving me with more questions than I'd started with. That night, I went through my email, trying to organize notes from the week. As I scrolled, I noticed a message sitting in my inbox. No subject, no name, just a single attachment. I hesitated, debating whether to open it. My instincts told me to delete it, but curiosity won. I clicked. The attachment opened to reveal a screenshot, an internal memo from my old company. It showed an email chain between Richard and another executive. My name was in it, highlighted several times. The most chilling part was one sentence: "If she keeps pushing her proposal, we'll make sure it never sees the light of day." My breath caught. So it hadn't just been about ego. Richard had deliberately planned to bury my work. And whoever had sent me that screenshot knew it. The next day, I brought it up to Daniel carefully. I didn't show him the email, but I hinted at the possibility of inside interference from my old workplace. His expression darkened slightly, and he said, "It's not surprising. Powerful people hate being exposed. But what's done is done. Focus on what's ahead." Something in his tone made me think he already knew more than he was letting on. Maybe he was part of this bigger game the mystery caller had mentioned. Maybe everyone here had a role to play in something I couldn't yet see. Meanwhile, the tension with my old company was growing. Rumors started spreading online, articles about leaked data, internal disputes, even whispers of mismanagement. Richard's name started appearing in headlines, attached to words like investigation and audit. It should have felt satisfying to see justice catching up, but it didn't. Instead, I felt uneasy, like I was watching a fire I hadn't meant to start. A few days later, Leah called me into her office. "I thought you should know," she said quietly. "Someone's been asking questions about you outside the company. They've called twice, pretending to be from an accounting firm. But they asked for details about your project and your contract. My heart sank. Did they say who they were? She shook her head. No, but they sounded confident. Too confident. She gave me a careful look. Be careful, Emily. In our world, curiosity is never innocent. That night, I couldn't sleep again. The city outside my window felt unfamiliar, almost hostile. I replayed every detail. Richard's sudden cruelty, Daniel's cryptic warning, the message on my phone, and now these calls. It was all connected somehow, I was sure of it. I started keeping notes, dates, names, anything unusual. I'd learned that when things don't make sense, patterns often hide in the details. And a pattern was starting to form. It wasn't just about my project. It was about control, information, power, influence. The same plan that got me promoted might have been part of something larger. Then, on Friday evening, as I was preparing to leave, I saw something that stopped me cold. Across the hallway, through the glass of Daniel's office, I saw him speaking with someone I hadn't seen before. The man wore a dark suit and had a sharp, cold expression. They were leaning in close, whispering intensely. On the table between them lay a folder, one I recognized. It was my project file. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but Daniel's face looked tense. At one point, the man slammed his hand lightly on the table and said something that made Daniel's jaw tighten. Then, almost instinctively, Daniel's eyes flicked toward the door, toward me. I stepped back quickly before he could see me, my heart pounding. Why was he meeting someone secretly with my file? Was this man from my old company? Or someone else entirely? That night, I sat in my apartment, the city lights blurring outside the window, trying to piece everything together. There were too many loose ends. Too many secrets. The message, the calls, the hidden meetings, it all pointed to something much bigger than a simple office rivalry. Just as I was about to shut down my laptop, a new message appeared on the screen. No subject line, no sender name, just a single sentence. You're getting close, but don't look too hard. Some things aren't meant to be found yet. A chill ran through me. It wasn't a random threat. It felt like a warning from someone who knew I was digging into something dangerous. Someone who was watching me even now. I closed my laptop and sat there in silence, the hum of the city fading behind me. I'd wanted success, recognition, a chance to prove myself. But what I had stepped into was something I didn't fully understand. A world where truth came with a price, and trust was a luxury I could no longer afford. And deep down I knew, the real fight hadn't even started yet. The next morning, I woke up with a strange feeling that something was about to change. The city outside looked calm, but there was a tension in the air I couldn't ignore. I kept replaying that last message in my mind. You're getting close, but don't look too hard. It sounded less like a warning and more like a challenge. I knew I shouldn't, but curiosity had always been my weakness. I couldn't walk away now, not when everything around me was starting to feel like a puzzle waiting to be solved. At work, things fell off. People were whispering in corners, conversations paused when I walked by, and even Daniel seemed distracted. His usual calm confidence had been replaced with quiet frustration. I caught him staring at his phone several times, his jaw tense. Something was going on, and whatever it was, I was somehow in the middle of it. Around noon, Leah appeared at my office door. Her expression was serious. "Can we talk privately?" she asked. I nodded, and she closed the door behind her. She glanced around before speaking. "Emily, listen carefully. There's something you need to know, but I need you to promise you won't repeat this to anyone." I felt my pulse quicken. "What is it?" She took a deep breath. "That man you saw in Daniel's office, he's not from your old company. He's from the board. There's an internal investigation going on. And it's not about you, it's about Daniel." I blinked in disbelief. "Daniel? Why?" Leah hesitated. "They suspect he's been using outside consultants, people like you, to gather data from competitors. They think your project might have been part of that." My stomach turned. "Wait, are you saying he used my work to spy on my old company?" She nodded slightly. "That's what they're trying to prove. They think someone leaked your proposal to lure you here, to make it look legitimate. And now, the board is trying to clean it up quietly." The room suddenly felt smaller. My chest tightened as the pieces started connecting in my mind. The anonymous messages, the strange phone call, Daniel's hidden meetings, and Richard's sudden panic. It all made sense now. I wasn't just caught in a rivalry between companies. I had become the link between them. I wanted to ask more, but Leah looked at her watch and stood quickly. I've already said too much. Just be careful, Emily. Don't trust Daniel, and don't let anyone take your laptop or your phone. They're tracking files. She slipped out of the room, leaving me frozen in place. My heart pounded, so loud I could hear it. I wanted to believe she was wrong, but something inside me knew she wasn't. Later that afternoon, Daniel called me into his office. He greeted me with his usual polite smile, but his eyes were different, sharper, colder. "How are you settling in?" he asked. I forced a smile. "It's been good. A lot to learn, but I'm managing." He nodded slowly, then leaned back in his chair. "Good. I've noticed you've been asking questions. About the files, the structure here, that's fine, but I need you to focus on your own work." His tone was calm, but it carried a weight that made my stomach twist. "Of course," I said, trying to sound casual. He gave me a small smile. "You're talented, Emily. Don't let curiosity ruin what you've built." The words echoed in my head as I walked out of his office. They sounded almost identical to the message I had received the night before. My hands trembled slightly as I gripped the folder I was holding. He knew. Somehow, Daniel knew I was digging deeper. That evening, I stayed late at the office after everyone had left. My laptop glowed in the dim light of the empty room as I searched through shared drives, cross-referencing documents and communication logs. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, maybe proof, maybe reassurance, but what I found instead made my blood run cold. There, buried deep in a hidden folder, was a series of emails between Daniel and a contact listed only as RM. The initials froze me. Richard Morgan, my former boss, the man who deleted my project. I opened one of the messages, and the truth hit me all at once. They had been in contact for months, exchanging updates about corporate strategy data, project drafts, and timelines. Daniel had known about my proposal long before he hired me. My entire offer, my new position, it had all been orchestrated. I wasn't chosen because of my work. I was chosen because I was the perfect cover. My heart pounded as I scrolled through more messages. The last one was dated only 2 days before I received my mysterious text. It read, "She's starting to ask questions. Handle it quietly before the board gets wind." A sound behind me made me jump. I turned sharply to see a shadow moving across the hallway outside my office. My fingers hovered over the laptop. My breath caught in my throat. I waited, listening. The footsteps stopped. The silence was unbearable. Slowly, I closed the screen and slid the laptop into my bag. I grabbed my phone, turned off the lights, and slipped out of the office. The elevator ride down felt endless. When the doors opened, the lobby was empty, except for a figure standing near the entrance. It was Daniel. He smiled faintly, his hands in his pockets. "Working late?" he asked, his voice calm, almost casual. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Just catching up on reports." He studied me for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly, then nodded. "Good. You're dedicated. That's rare." He stepped closer. "By the way, I'll need your laptop tomorrow morning. IT's running some security checks." My stomach dropped. "Of course," I managed to say. He gave me a polite nod, then turned and walked toward the exit. His reflection disappeared into the glass doors, leaving me standing there, frozen. That night, I couldn't go home. I walked aimlessly through the quiet streets, the city lights blurring through my thoughts. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong, that giving him that laptop would be a mistake I'd never recover from. I needed help, but I didn't know who to trust anymore. Just as I was about to turn toward the subway, my phone buzzed. Another unknown number. I hesitated before answering. A voice on the other end said, "You found the emails, didn't you?" My breath caught. "Who is this?" The voice was calm but urgent. "You're in danger, Emily. Don't go to the office tomorrow. Don't give them anything. Meet me instead." "Meet you where?" I whispered. The line crackled, then went dead. I stood there, gripping my phone, surrounded by the noise of a city. My hands were shaking, my heart racing, and for the first time, I realized this was no longer about a deleted project or corporate betrayal. This was something far bigger, Something that reached beyond two companies, beyond anything I'd ever imagined. And whatever I decided to do next would change everything. The night felt endless as Emily stood under the flickering streetlight, her phone still pressed to her ear, even though the call had ended minutes ago. The city's noise had faded into a dull hum behind her thoughts. Someone out there knew what she'd found, knew the danger she was in, and yet they wanted to help. Or at least, that's what they wanted her to believe. She walked to a nearby cafe that stayed open late, ordered a coffee she didn't touch, and opened her laptop carefully. Her fingers trembled as she connected to a private network she'd once used for freelance work. She needed to back up everything, the emails, the messages, every clue that proved Daniel's connection to Richard. If anything happened, the truth couldn't disappear with her. But as she uploaded the files to a secure folder, a small pop-up appeared on her screen. Access denied. Device already flagged for remote monitoring. Her stomach tightened. They were already tracking her. That meant Daniel, or whoever was behind this, knew exactly what she was doing. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a call. It was an email with no subject line. The message was short. You're not the only one he's used. Check Project Helios. Emily frowned and searched through the copied files. It took her several minutes to find a folder with that name, hidden deep under layers of random data. When she opened it, her heart skipped a beat. Inside were names, dozens of them, employees, consultants, and external partners from different companies, all connected to Daniel's projects. Some of them had even worked with Richard before. It wasn't just her. She wasn't a random target. This had been going on for years. People being used as middlemen, manipulated into gathering information under the guise of collaboration. Daniel wasn't just part of a corporate game. He was running it. Before she could look further, the screen flickered and went black. A faint smell of burnt plastic filled the air. Her laptop had shut down completely. She stared at it in disbelief, realizing it wasn't an accident. It had been remotely disabled. Panic began to rise in her chest, but she forced herself to breathe. She gathered her things, paid for her untouched coffee, and stepped outside into the cool night. The streets were quieter now, and every passing car made her flinch. She knew she couldn't go home, not when someone was already tracking her. As she walked, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Leah. "Where are you? Don't go to the office. I'll explain everything in person." Emily's hands shook as she typed back. "You knew about this, didn't you? About Project Helios?" There was a long pause before Leah's reply came through. "It's not what you think. I tried to protect you. Meet me at the old metro station, 11 p.m. Come alone." Every instinct told her not to go. But she needed answers. Leah was the only person who might still be on her side, or at least had reasons to help her. When Emily reached the station, the place was nearly deserted. The faint hum of electricity buzzed through the dim lights, casting long shadows across the tiled floor. She checked her phone. 10:58, 2 minutes early. A sound echoed behind her, a door creaking open. She turned sharply, her heart pounding. Leah stepped out of the darkness, her face pale, eyes darting nervously around the room. "You came," Leah said quietly. "Good. We don't have much time." Emily crossed her arms. "Start talking. What is Project Helios? What's Daniel doing?" Leah hesitated, then whispered, "It's not just Daniel. The board's involved too. They've been selling internal data to international clients under fake partnerships. Project Helios was created to make it look like innovation research, but it's all a front." Emily stared at her, stunned. "So they use people like me to collect data and leak it?" Leah nodded. "Yes. And Daniel was in charge of recruiting the right people, the ones who wouldn't question too much, who had access to the right files. You were perfect because of your connection to Richard." The air felt heavy as the truth settled in. "Then why warn me now?" Emily asked, her voice low. Leah's eyes softened. "Because you weren't supposed to find out. The moment you did, they decided you were a risk. Daniel isn't working alone anymore. There's someone new, someone from the board who's taking control. They've been cleaning up the trail, one person at a time." Emily's throat went dry. "Cleaning up? What do you mean?" Before Leah could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed through the station. Heavy, deliberate. Leah froze. They followed you, she whispered. Emily's pulse raced. What? Who? Leah's eyes filled with fear. Run! The lights flickered once, then again. Emily turned toward the corridor and saw a silhouette emerging from the shadows. Tall, calm, familiar. It was Daniel. Emily, he said, his voice echoing. You shouldn't have come here. She took a step back. You lied to me. He sighed softly. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. But it's not too late. You can still fix this. Just give me the files. Leah grabbed Emily's arm. Don't trust him. He'll. Daniel raised a hand, and two men appeared behind him, both wearing dark suits. The tension in the air thickened as Emily looked between them, her mind racing. She could feel her phone in her pocket, the only proof she had left. Daniel's tone turned colder. You have no idea how deep this goes, Emily. You think you're exposing corruption, but you're standing in the middle of something much bigger than either of us. Leah stepped in front of Emily, her voice trembling but steady. She's not part of this anymore. Let her go. For a moment, no one moved. Then Daniel's expression softened again, almost pitying. You still don't understand. You can't run from this. They already know where she is. Emily's heart dropped as a faint vibration buzzed in her pocket, her phone lighting up with an unknown number again. One message appeared on the screen. They're not who they seem. Trust no one. She looked up at Leah, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. And for the first time, she wasn't sure if Leah was truly there to protect her, or to deliver her straight into the hands of the people who wanted her silenced. The station lights dimmed again, and in that brief second of darkness, Emily made her choice. She turned and ran. Emily ran through the dim tunnels of the old metro station, her breath coming out in sharp bursts as her footsteps echoed against the concrete walls. The lights flickered overhead, creating long, broken shadows that made the space feel alive. Behind her, Daniel's voice carried through the emptiness, calm but chilling. You can't run from the truth, Emily. You were part of it from the beginning. She didn't look back. Her heart pounded as she sprinted toward the emergency exit sign, clutching her phone tightly in her hand. The message she just received replayed in her mind. Trust no one. Those 3 words now meant everything. Leah's warning, Daniel's manipulation, the board's corruption, it all swirled in her mind like a storm she couldn't escape. When she finally reached the end of a corridor, she shoved open a rusted metal door and stumbled into the cool night air. The city lights shimmered in the distance, silent and indifferent. She knew she couldn't just keep running forever. She needed to end this, once and for all. Emily ducked into a nearby alley and leaned against the wall to catch her breath. Her hands trembled as she pulled out her phone and opened the secure folder she'd managed to save before her laptop was destroyed. Inside were fragments of data, emails, meeting logs, payment trails, all leading back to the board. But one file she hadn't opened before now caught her attention. It was labeled simply, Call Recordings. Curiosity pushed through her fear. She clicked play. Daniel's voice came through first, calm and composed. She has no idea. Once the report's done, delete her work. We'll claim the system crashed. Then another voice joined in, familiar, steady and cold. And if she finds out? Emily froze. It was Leah. Her stomach turned. She played it again, hoping she'd misheard, but there was no mistake. Leah had been working with Daniel all along. The late-night meetings, the warnings, the concern, it had all been part of the act. Emily felt a wave of anger rise inside her. She wasn't just another pawn in their game anymore. She had proof, real, undeniable proof. And this time, she wasn't going to hide. She opened a new email and attached every file she had left, sending it to multiple journalists, an independent investigator she'd once met at a conference, and even the company's legal department. Her hand steadied as she hit send. You wanted a story, she whispered. Now you'll have one. Just as she was about to turn off her phone, it buzzed again. Another unknown number. She hesitated for a moment, then answered. Emily! The voice on the other end said. It was Daniel. His tone was no longer confident. You've made a mistake. You think this will save you? They'll come after all of us now. She took a deep breath. Then maybe it's time they did. There was silence for a long moment. Then Daniel spoke again, softer this time. You think Leah betrayed you. But she didn't. She was trying to protect you. She sent those files to you before they shut everything down. She knew you'd be the only one who could get them out. Emily froze, her anger dissolving into confusion. What are you talking about? I heard her voice on that recording. She made that recording to throw them off, Daniel said quietly. To make it look like she was with us. She knew she'd be followed. Leah's gone, Emily. They got to her before she could escape. The world seemed to tilt. Emily felt a lump rise in her throat, her fingers tightening around the phone. Leah's last message replayed in her mind. It's not what you think. I tried to protect you. Maybe she'd been telling the truth after all. For a moment, Emily didn't know what to feel. Anger, grief, guilt. But there was no time left to think. In the distance, she heard sirens wailing, growing louder by the second. Whether they were coming for her or for Daniel, she didn't know. I sent everything, she said finally. It's out now. There's no going back. Daniel's voice cracked. Then you better hope the truth is enough. The call ended. Emily stood there in the dark alley, the phone still warm in her hand, listening to the sound of the city closing in around her. The next morning, her phone exploded with notifications, calls, messages, news alerts. Every major outlet had picked up the story. Corporate scandal exposed. Insider leaks proof of data manipulation. Her name wasn't mentioned, but she knew people would figure it out soon enough. She turned on the TV in her small apartment, and there it was, Daniel being escorted out of the company building, surrounded by flashing cameras. The board had gone silent, lawyers were scrambling, and suddenly the powerful weren't untouchable anymore. For the first time in months, Emily felt something close to peace. But then her phone buzzed again. One new message, from another unknown number. You think it's over. But Helios wasn't just a project. It was a cover. We were only the beginning. She stared at the screen, her breath catching. The message had an attachment, a photo. It was a picture of her standing outside the cafe from the night before. Someone had taken it from across the street. Her hand trembled as she locked her phone and looked out the window. The city seemed calm, ordinary, but she knew better now. What she'd uncovered wasn't the end. It was just one piece of something much larger. The world outside looked bright and quiet, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Somewhere, in some corner of the city, someone else was already preparing their next move. And as she stood there, watching the sunrise reflect off the buildings, she realized that this wasn't the end of her story. It was only the beginning of another one. The city felt different in the days that followed. The same streets that once seemed rushed and indifferent now carried whispers of a scandal that had shaken the company. Emily walked past newsstands showing Daniel's face, headlines bold with words like corruption, betrayal, and whistleblower revelation. It was strange seeing the chaos from the outside, knowing she had been at the center of it all. She had imagined that exposing the truth would bring her peace, but instead, it left her with silence, the kind that comes after a storm. Her apartment was still cluttered with the papers and drives she'd used to collect evidence. She sat at her small table, scrolling through the hundreds of unread messages flooding her inbox. Journalists wanting interviews, old coworkers offering apologies, and even strangers calling her brave. But she didn't feel like a hero. She felt tired, the kind of tired that goes deeper than exhaustion, the kind that sits in your chest after everything you've believed and has been tested. Emily spent hours going through the files, one last time before deleting them for good. The investigation had already been handed over to authorities, and she no longer needed to keep reminders of what had happened. Each document, each recording, felt like a ghost of a chapter she was finally closing. But before deleting the last folder, she found something she hadn't noticed before, a short video file named 4E. Her hand hesitated before clicking it open. The screen lit up, and Leah's face appeared. Her expression was calm, but her eyes carried a sadness Emily had never seen before. "If you're seeing this," Leah began softly, "then it means I couldn't make it out. I know you must be angry, confused, maybe even hating me right now. But I need you to know I wasn't your enemy. I played along because it was the only way to keep you safe. They were watching us both." Leah paused, as if weighing every word. Project Helios was never meant to be what it became. We started it as a research initiative, something to improve systems, to make work transparent. But when the board got involved, it turned into something darker. When I realized how deep it went, it was already too late. Daniel was following orders, and I tried to buy you time. I knew you'd find the truth, Emily. You always do. The video ended with Leah looking directly at the camera. Whatever happens next, don't let this break you. Use it. Build something better. Emily sat frozen for a moment, her chest tightening. A single tear slipped down her cheek as she whispered, "I'm sorry, Leah." The guilt she'd carried since that night began to ease, replaced by a quiet sense of understanding. Leah hadn't betrayed her. She had sacrificed herself to give Emily the chance to do what she couldn't. The following weeks passed in a blur of meetings and interviews. Investigators reached out for her statement, and legal teams built cases against the company's executives. Daniel, surprisingly, cooperated. It turned out that after everything fell apart, he decided to help the authorities uncover the deeper layers of corruption within the organization. He was still responsible for his actions, but even he seemed ready to make amends. When Emily met him one last time in the company's now empty office building, there was no anger left in her voice. "You destroyed my work," she said quietly. "A whole year of my life." Daniel nodded, his eyes tired. "I know. I can't undo it. But you did more with the truth than any of us ever could. You saved what was left." She looked at him for a long moment before saying, "No, Daniel." Leah did. He nodded again, saying nothing more. For the first time, he looked like someone who had finally understood the cost of what he'd done. Emily left the building with a small sense of closure. The board was being replaced, and the company had begun rebuilding under new leadership. Her name would always be linked to the story, but not as a victim, as the one who refused to stay silent. Months later, she started her own consulting firm, one dedicated to helping companies maintain transparency and ethical standards. It wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about prevention. She named the firm Helios, not as a reminder of what went wrong, but as a symbol of light, the kind that exposes the truth instead of hiding it. The first time she stood in her new office, surrounded by a small team that believed in her vision, she felt something she hadn't in a long time: peace. She looked out the window at the skyline, the same city that had once made her feel invisible, and realized she had found her purpose again. One evening, as she was leaving the office, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Her heart skipped a beat before she opened it. The message was simple: you did it. She'd be proud. There was no name, no signature. But somehow, Emily knew it was from someone who had known Leah, maybe Daniel, maybe someone else who had once been part of the project. She smiled faintly, tucking her phone into her bag as she stepped outside. The air was cool, the streets alive with movement. For the first time in what felt like forever, Emily didn't feel like she was running anymore. The fear, the lies, the betrayal, they had shaped her, but they no longer defined her. As she walked toward the train station, she passed a billboard flashing headlines about corporate accountability and workplace ethics, topics that were now being discussed everywhere because of her story. People were paying attention, asking questions, demanding change. Emily stopped for a moment, watching the lights reflect off the glass buildings. "Leah," she whispered softly, "we did it." Her reflection looked back at her, stronger, calmer, and no longer afraid. She took a deep breath and smiled. The chapter had finally closed, and a new one had begun, one where truth wasn't something to be feared, but something to protect. In the end, she didn't just rebuild her life. She rebuilt her sense of faith, in herself, in people, and in the idea that even when everything seems lost, courage can still light the way. Emily walked away that night with her head held high, her story complete, but her purpose just beginning. She had learned that sometimes justice doesn't arrive in one moment of triumph. It comes slowly, through the quiet persistence of those who refuse to give up. And as the city lights glowed behind her, she knew that no matter what came next, she would never be the same again.